Please read the disclaimer. Larry Fink warns U.S. debt will matter. We're too focused on monetary policy and not enough on fiscal discipline. The national debt is over 38 trillion and still growing. We keep saying one day it'll matter. I just don't know when that day comes. Hello, beautiful people. Shalom, money makers. We're in a very interesting situation right now in the crypto market with XRP, where the US debt continues to rise, the dollar continues to devalue, and no one knows what's going to happen in the future. I don't know if you know this, but for example, the exchange rate where I live is the lowest that it's been in years towards the dollar, right? Meaning that the dollar is weak, right? If I make money in dollars, I have less shekels, right? So this is a very interesting situation that in the future could create multiple problems globally just because the US is so strong, right? It could have a bad financial situation on the market. And it's up to us as investors to position ourselves in a way where this won't be a problem to us, okay? How we can do that, that's the billion-dollar question. As we go on in the years, we'll continue to try to figure out how we can diversify ourselves the most so we don't get hurt if the national debt of the US continues to grow and becomes a problem one day. Okay, so that's very, very important to remember. Also, President Trump threatens to impose tariffs on countries who oppose his plan for the US acquisition of Greenland, right? So, after he said he was going to put tariffs on countries that were dealing with Iran. Now, if anybody says no to him about Greenland, also tariffs. He actually decided to reduce tariffs on Taiwan that signed a deal with him. So the tariffs have become a very strong political point for the president. And if the Supreme Court comes out and says, no, 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 you can't use these tariffs anymore, that will be a big hit to the president and to the US, and we'll see how the markets react on that. Of course, he has alternatives. He can implement the tariffs in different ways. We'll see how that plays out, but it's still on the table for the US government to have that hit as well. So I know the first two things were a little bit scary. Let's turn it into a good news right now. Upbit, which is the South Korean exchange, reports XRP as South Korea's most traded digital asset in 2025, with over 1 trillion in volume proceeds on the exchange. It's not a surprise to me that XRP is number one in South Korea. We see Upbit on the top of the exchange volumes every single day almost. And so it's not surprising to me that they would be the top dog for XRP trading in 2025. Moreover, a lot of the action that came for XRP in end of 2024 into 2025 was coming from South Korea. You could see it actually if you were watching the graphs, that a lot of the action on XRP was happening when it was prime trading hours in South Korea. Remember, there's time differences between places around the world, right? And so that was always happening. I kept seeing that there was a lot of action that was happening when the South Koreans had prime trading hours. Right now, XRP is sitting at $2.05, down minus 1.3% on the day. Bitcoin down about 0.5% at 95,000, and Ethereum down about 1% at 3,200 after we saw extreme greed yesterday. Today, it's come down to about neutral. It's very interesting to see how the market plays out here, how XRP is going to play out, because we had lots of momentum. XRP was has the CNBC curse ever since CNBC talked about XRP. It's just been going down. We'll see if there can be any recovery going into this. You could call it a long weekend here for XRP. Not only is South Korea number one for XRP, but South Korea also passes tokenized security laws. South Korea has legalized security token offerings, enabling blockchain-based trading of tokenized stocks, real estate, and other real-world assets. So South Korea continues to have its love for the crypto market. The people love it, but soon maybe the government will be more and more prone to be pro-crypto. The politics in South Korea are very complicated. A lot of their leaders don't stay for long, right? There's a lot of change in their leaders. There's a lot of scandals, a lot of things like that. There's just if you remember I think it was about a year ago, their president declared martial law because they were trying to kick him out, and it was a whole thing, and the market sold off, and XRP sold off because the South Koreans freaked out. What's going to happen with their money? Is it going to go down in value? They start selling their assets, and it was a whole thing about a year ago. So today he had the trial. I think he got like a punishment or something today or yesterday. I read something about it. So they did elect a more pro crypto leadership. And it will be interesting to see how that will affect the price of XRP going forward. Because if you have a pro crypto leadership and you already have people that love XRP, so it could be a very yummy recipe there for XRP popularity and maybe help XRP's price in the future. Now, as always, I just want to remind you this video is for entertainment purposes, for educational purposes only, not financial advice. Always do your own due diligence before you decide to invest. Very, very important. So Coinbase CEO, well, actually, let's take a listen to what he had to say on Fox News. We've been talking a lot about the pullout from the Clarity Act. Let's see what he had to say. Wait, technical difficulty time. I had it on mute. Here we go.
Got the Genius Act passed into law, which actually did enable stablecoin rewards to happen. The banks had their own concerns, and we reached a good outcome in the Genius Act. And now the banks really are coming and trying to undermine the president's crypto agenda. I mean, these are the same banks that, debanked him and his family, right? And they want to come in and say that Americans should not be able to actually earn more money on their money. They're trying to protect their own profit margins, taking money out of the pockets of hardworking average Americans and putting it into the coffers of these big banks that are hitting record profits. And so our view is that there should be a level playing field where banks and crypto companies can lean into stablecoin legislation as an opportunity, and that includes paying rewards to Americans so that they can earn more money on their money.
So my twin, right? We look alike a little bit. My twin is basically saying what I have said since that news came out. He said what I was saying, that the banks are scared because they're afraid that the money is going to come out of their pockets and go into crypto and stable coins, and they're not going to have money to make profits off of, and they're having record profits. And these are the same banks, again, that try to debank the president. So I think the president might go strong on this and try to, I don't know if I'll go after the banks, but he is very invested in the fact that the Clarity Act will pass. And U.S. Senator David Harold is urging lawmakers to act fast on crypto policy. He warns that without clear market structure legislation, capital and innovation will continue to flee the United States. Bottom line, regulatory clarity isn't optional anymore. Market structure must pass. Let's listen to what he had to say.
And this is a particularly complex piece of legislation. So, I wouldn't lose sight of the fact that we've made an enormous amount of progress. And now the question is, over the next couple of weeks, how do we resolve some of those open issues and get a piece of legislation that we can get bipartisan support for? And listen, I want to say one point on this, Andrew. The reason it's so important is if you don't have that certainty, capital and talent is like water. It's going to go the path of least resistance. So America needs to be in a leadership role here. And if you don't do that, you're going to have regulators that are going to go back and forth depending what party's in charge. We saw that under the last administration. So we need a legislative fix that the president can sign and give everybody certainty. And this is a particularly complex piece of legislation.
Again, if the companies and the money, they have clarity, if they feel wanted, then they're going to invest in the United States. If not, then they'll go to Dubai, they'll go to the UAE, they'll go to Singapore, they'll go where the regulations allow them. Although Singapore has become a little bit harder for crypto, but they'll go to places that want them, right? And if the US is not that, then they'll go other places. Now, a lot of American money might not come into the crypto market if there's no clarity, if they don't know what the regulations are, if they don't know what the taxation is going to be, if they don't know if they're going to get subpoenaed by the SEC or not, right? Or so when you have that situation, the question is it worth the risk, right? Those companies will say, is it worth the risk? By the way, it should be the same for regular retail investors as well. That's something that you always have to ask yourself when you're getting into a position. Is it worth the risk, right? Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. Sometimes you might be, 20 and you can take a little bit more risk, and sometimes you'll be 60 and you can take a little bit more risk, depending on the person, of course. But that's usually the consensus. So it is what it is. We'll see what happens. Maybe there's going to be a government shutdown. Maybe there won't. It could pass. It could get delayed. It's going to be a very, very interesting next coming weeks to see how all of this plays out, what happens with the tariffs. It's Freaky Friday. And so it's going to be a very, very interesting weekend, I think, here. And let me know in the comment section, what do you think? Do you think the Clarity Act will eventually pass? Or is this just because of what Coinbase did, it's going to be a dud and crypto is ruined forever? Or do you think that this is just something that's going to pass and everything's going to be all right? And in 2-3 weeks, we're going to forget we even had all this drama and all this situation? Let me know in the comment section. Of course, subscribe to the channel. Check out the links in the description down below. And don't forget to smash that like button. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.